This week on Quality Digest Live, what do you do when your boss tries to lead you on a suicide mission?
Plus, the Internet of Things marches on in manufacturing. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for May 16th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm the very noisy Quality Digest publisher, Mike Richmond. Sorry
Slam
about that, Dirk.
coffee
Slam
cup
that
down.
coffee cup down. Sorry about that. Well, food safety is an issue that's undeniably important. I certainly think about it whenever I'm digging into a nice, fresh hunk of salmon. Ella? There's supposed to be a drum roll there or something. Rim shot? No? All right, sorry. Well, if you're like me, then the International Organization of Standardization wants to hear from you, most especially if you work in the food production or the food supply chain. ISO's news item, Future Revision of ISO 22000 on Food Safety Management, Your Voice Matters, ran in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And according to the release, ISO 22000, which was first launched in 2005, is being reviewed later this year by ISO TC 34SC17, the technical committee behind the standard. TC 34SC17 is seeking comment on the standard from those representing industry, consumers, governments, regulators, laboratories, or other organizations active in the food industry. Specifically, these ISO representatives want to know what you like about the standard, what you think needs to be changed, and any problems you may have in implementing it. Comments are welcome from now through mid-June. So to make your feelings known on this topic, contact the ISO member body in your country or email TC34SC17 at hj@ds.dk. Oh, and if you're curious about food safety, we happen to be co-hosting a webinar on this topic. Just happen to be doing it with our partner Sparta Systems, titled Recipe for Success, Food Safety Regulations and the Role of Quality Management. The webinar is coming up on May 29th, so keep an eye on your inbox for details on how to register for that event. And for more information on this news item, including a direct link again to that email that I kind of blew through very quickly there, that email address for submitting comment on ISO 22000, and not to mention, of course, all the rest of the items and pieces that Dirk and I are going to be covering on today's show, be sure to check out our story links available, as always, right below our video player screen right down there.
That's right. Well, think you might be happier working in a green building? Well, maybe not. According to new research from the University of California, Berkeley and the University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom, people working in buildings certified under LEED, Green Building Standard, appear no more satisfied with the quality of their indoor work environments than those in conventional buildings. So LEED, if you're not familiar with it, that's L-E-E-D, if you haven't heard of that, is a rating system that certifies buildings as green if they incorporate environmentally friendly solutions that reduce the use of water, energy, and other resources. Stefano Schiavone, an assistant professor of architecture in sustainability, energy, and environment at UC Berkeley Center for the Built Environment, and associate professor Sergio Altamonte with the University of Nottingham's Environmental Physics and Design Research Group, analyzed survey responses of more than 21,000 people in nearly 150 mainly large office buildings, mostly in the United States, 65, or about half, of which are LEED certified. Their findings were published in the April issue of the Journal of Building Environment and determined that most workers do not experience a higher level of workplace satisfaction simply because they work in LEED certified or green buildings. And this kind of went in kind of contrary to some earlier studies that were done, but they were done on smaller sample sizes. So Schiavone and Altamonte thought maybe the results were a little suspect. So Schiavone and Altamonte said that the workplace satisfaction might improve if more design-related information could be collected by assessing LEED certified buildings based on actual performance and operations. They said they hope that their survey will lead builders and businesses to pay closer attention to a couple things: occupant feedback and designing strategies and solutions aimed at influencing occupant satisfaction and feelings of health and well-being, as well as job performance, and that all this should be part of the LEED certification process. Now, the deal that I think they're concerned with here, and it's kind of in the subtext of the article, is that it's all well and good that these buildings are LEED certified. I mean, it's important, and certainly from the building manager and so forth, there's a bottom line benefit. If your building's more green, it's more energy efficient, you're using less energy, that means less cost, energy costs and so forth. But it's also important that, that the occupants of the building have some sort of buy-in into the whole approach. Otherwise, how does it perpetuate itself? I mean, and so kind of what they're looking for is if people are in a green building and they recognize they're in a green building or a LEED building, and they recognize that there is a personal benefit to it. They feel more comfortable. They feel like they're helping the environment. They feel that their workspace is more conducive to their work and so forth. Then they are going to have more buy-in into the whole LEED certification. That's going to help support it. It's going to get more people behind green incentives like or green standards like this sort of thing. So that's kind of what they're looking for is, and what they want to see is that the LEED certification process actually encompasses and leads to more being done in buildings to actually enhance the user aspect of being in a green building. So kind of interesting study, little kind of a little social thing going on there. So.
Yeah, it's like anything else. I mean, the buy-in is really going to be key. I mean, in any large undertaking, and if you have many people working in a building, it's a large undertaking that you're cooperating on. You know, people need to understand the reasons behind it, and they need to understand how what they do affects it and how it affects them too. And if you don't do that, if you just kind of throw it out there at them, well, you can't really expect to get any of the benefits out of it.
Right.
It's kind of similar to almost like ISO 9001 registration, right? I mean,
right.
If you don't make people understand why you're doing it, you really can't expect them to buy into it. So,
yep.
Good story there about LEED. Thanks, Dirk. All right, well, what Lewis and Clark showed us about effective leadership by Jack Dunnigan ran in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, and that's the next story that we're going to cover here. And you can see it right there. Jack Dunnigan, frequent contributor to Quality Digest Daily. We always like Jack's stuff because he talks about leadership a lot. And leadership is the eternally important factor in any successful undertaking, I think. And the legendary explorer's 1804 to 1806 expedition was, in retrospect, a fantastic success. At the time, however, it was considered a failure, and I didn't realize that. It was considered a failure because they did not accomplish their chief mission, which was to find a navigable water route across the North American continent. There was good reason for that. As we know now, such a route doesn't actually exist, and we have Lewis and Clark to thank for that knowledge. I mean, they didn't know that at the time. Thomas Jefferson, the president who sent them there,
it's funny. Think of all these discoveries. In retrospect, all the discoveries that Lewis and Clark made, and at the time it was like, hey,
who knew?
Where's this route?
Right. What's going on here? You're trying to find a way to get, because in 1804 there wasn't really. I mean, you couldn't get across a continent. You certainly couldn't fly. There was no rail. There was no cars. I mean,
it was just slow going.
Yeah, but if you had a water route, you could have a canal, or you could float it. You could actually open up the Pacific Northwest or California, whatever it may be. But they didn't find that. Well, Dunnigan makes the point that every long-term project is essentially a journey, and leaders are the ones who need to keep the troops fired up, fed, focused, all those other Fs throughout the process. All of that makes sense, and any famous leader or leaders throughout world history, I think, would have worked for the analogy that Dunnigan is employing in that way. But to me, I think what makes the choice of Lewis and Clark perfect was their ability to handle the unexpected and find value in the discoveries that happen along the way, just like you were just mentioning. I mean, the quote that I always like that's been attributed to like zillions of different people is, plans are worthless, but planning is essential. Right. It's an old saying, and it's hung around for a long time because it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you think about it, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark made very detailed plans. They were engineers, made very detailed plans. They had a very clear goal, but they quickly diverged from the game plan as the realities of their project presented themselves day after day after day for 2 years. Any of us who've been in a long-term project know that. There was no waterway connecting St. Louis with California. There still isn't. But what was there were mountains and Native American settlements, a new species of flora and fauna. In documenting this entire amazing panorama, Lewis and Clark opened up the continent of North America and land that would one day be part of the United States. Right here, we're in California right now. The value of that knowledge wasn't realized at the time, but we sure appreciate it now, I think, in retrospect, right? Leaders, and this is the point here, leaders lead and create value from the places that they go and that they take their teams. I don't care how good of a planner you are. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can be the greatest planner in the world. You're never, ever, ever going to be able to account for every possible contingency that life throws at you. But in the moment, as you're going through that, as unexpected problems and unexpected opportunities arise in the midst of the journey, the greatest among us will take what you've learned and apply it on the site at the time to getting the most from the terrain you find yourself. Sometimes you do find that waterway worth millions. Other times you unexpectedly find a land of opportunity that would eventually be worth billions, maybe trillions. Who knows?
Sure.
I mean, how much is the western part of the United States worth, right? I mean, in retrospect to the United States, trillions of dollars. See, it's all about keeping yourself open to what presents itself and understanding that even as a leader, what you want and what you can have are two very, very, very different things. I think that's good wisdom there, and that's
Right.
what I got out of Jack's very, I think, very elegant article on Lewis and Clark, which appeared earlier this week in Quality Digest Daily.
And moving from history to the future.
The future.
Actually,
Yep.
the future is actually here. You know, we've talked about the Internet of Things on the show before, and the Internet of Things, for those of you who aren't hip, or IoT, it's all about those billions of devices out there like, I don't know, your toaster, that are in fact connected to the internet and reporting information back to the manufacturer. In an article this week by Stan Przybylski, Experiencing the Quality of the Internet of Things, Przybylski points out that by 2020, about 50 billion devices, 50 billion, that's with a B, will be connected to the internet, and more than 1 trillion sensors. Wow. That's a lot. So what does that mean for users and for manufacturers? Well, we have Stan Przybylski with SimData with us via Skype to tell us all about it. Stan, how's it going this morning?
Good. How you doing, guys?
Oh, pretty good.
Doing
well, first
good.
off, really quickly, what does SimData do, and how are you guys connected to the Internet of Things topic?
SimData is a global strategic management consulting and market research firm that focuses on the product lifecycle management industry. Product lifecycle management is really about the set of tools and services that support product development. And a lot of the IoT stuff is talking about making products smart.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. So you have all of these connected sensors. 1 trillion is kind of the estimate, or 1 trillion by 2020. And what are the manufacturers trying to accomplish? I mean, it's the manufacturers that are embedding this capability, the capability of products, I guess, to connect to the internet. What are they looking to get it out of it? What's in it for them?
Well, one of the trends that is supported by the Internet of Things is what some people call product as a service or productization. It's been around actually for a long time. I was surprised in doing some of the research in this area that you've heard the expression perhaps GE sells, they don't sell aircraft engines anymore, they sell power by the hour.
Right.
And it seems like a relatively recent innovation, but actually they've been talking about that since the 60s. So if you're going to deliver products that are a service that people are expecting certain levels of quality, support over a long period of time, then you're going to need to have an understanding of how those things are actually working in the field, or more importantly, not working, so you can get the old Maytag repairman out there.
So this gives the manufacturers what? Just instant feedback on how a product is behaving in the field, or how it's being used?
That's one of the main things that people are looking for, is to understand the behavior and to be able to do predictive maintenance, to figure out not when the thing is broken or when is it about to break. This is crucial in a lot of consumer as well as industrial applications.
Is it also giving them information on how the user is using the product, rather than just maintenance, but are they gathering information on this is how the user is using my product in order to, I don't know, make future enhancements, that sort of thing?
That's the thing, all the above. Once you put these cheap processors, memory, and sensors on something, you can ask it just about anything. Obviously, you have to plan for it, but you can ask it just about anything. So performance monitoring is important. Usage feedback is going to be crucial to help people improve their products, right? If you can readily understand that you put a feature in that you slaved over that no one's using, then that's going to be very helpful when you come out with Rev 2, Rev 3, and Rev 4.
Well, let's look at it from the other side. So the manufacturers are putting this in there in order to gain information for themselves. Hopefully, their hope is that it's going to improve the product, maybe help create better products in the future. But what about for the consumer? What is in it for the consumer? Because I mean, we're going to talk about this a little bit. There's some security issues here. So I'm letting somebody basically into my home, into all of my appliances, to send this data to some manufacturer who knows where. What am I getting out of it?
But there was also, Google bought a company called Nest not that long ago. This was mentioned, I think, in the article. And basically Nest is a consumer product where everyone is controlling their home environment using their phones. So we've already experienced a lot of this stuff through our mobile devices, because mobile devices are essentially IoT nodes. So think about all the things that you can do with your smartphone and all the joy, pain, and other emotions you've suffered as a result of it. You're going to be able to do all of those things with a lot more devices.
Okay, well, let's talk about, I touched on this just a little bit. So, I mean, obviously it has come up with, the security issue has come up with, smartphones and that sort of stuff. But I mean, I understand there's even some security concerns with your toaster, your refrigerator, your kind of your dumb internet connected device that maybe we're going to find more and more scattered throughout our home. What are some of the security concerns, and are manufacturers actually looking at these and addressing them?
Well, obviously, as we've seen with our phones and with these social media applications, people are gathering lots of data on us, and those type of privacy concerns are, I think, foremost. On the other side is actually more of a physical security or network security, where people are worried about someone taking over their device and doing bad things with it, like sending spams from your refrigerator, for instance. That was in the news recently. So there's a number of different levels of security that need to be a concern, but in some ways we could be better off in this space because the technologies are newer. A lot of the security breaks that we hear about in infrastructure and other places that are also IoT or very often called machine-to-machine type applications, where things are still running, Windows NT or some old operating system that isn't potentially as secure. So with technology moving forward, I think we have more of an opportunity to maybe address some of those things.
Stan, this kind of came to me as you were talking. I wanted to jump here with a quick question about big data, because I mean, really, this is a big data play in its purest form. I mean, you think about, as we talked about, all these billions of devices and trillions of sensors. It's really mind-boggling. I mean, you're a researcher. That's your background. I know, is in research. So how do you even contemplate all that data? I mean, how do you understand what within all that those mountains of data are critical, and what you can really use to leverage better work on behalf of the manufacturers and better service to a customer?
Well, that's going to be a huge problem. I mean, big data, even business intelligence isn't as broadly used as some people might like. And big data was there before we started talking about IoT, and the data volumes are just going to explode. So you're going to need different analysis techniques, different data storage techniques for the vast volumes. As far as what you're going after, that's one of my concerns. You said I'm a researcher. Actually, prior, my training is in mathematics, and that's actually one of my concerns about all of the analytics that they're doing, is because there's a lot of correlation that's going to be used. And anybody that took statistics knows that correlation and causality are not the same thing. So a lot of advanced analytic techniques, you see a lot of spending by people like Oracle and IBM in this space. IBM just invested over $1 billion in Watson. They're going to use the Watson technology that you've seen on Jeopardy, among other places, to help parse these vast volumes of data.
Well, Stan, thanks for giving us a little bit more information and background on the Internet of Things. This has been Stan Presbolinski, Vice President of Research with SimData. Stan, thanks for joining us on the show this morning.
Thanks. Anytime, guys. Thanks for asking me.
Sure.
Thanks, Stan. Appreciate it.
So long.
So long. Good stuff there, Dirk.
Yep.
I think that, as he said, I mean, this is the issue that's in front of us now, is this big data understanding, and what he mentioned there about correlation and causality. I mean,
sure,
it's something it's a fallacy that I think a lot of people, even people with a mathematics and statistical background, sometimes trip over. Is this idea that you can find patterns, but maybe those patterns aren't truth. I mean, but what is truth? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting questions.
And the more data there is out there, sometimes it's harder to find kind of causality for some of the patterns that you spot.
We talked about it last week with the sensors of to try to track hospitals and people falling in hospitals.
Right.
I mean, you don't want to get false positives in anything with medical, but a false positive is better than a false negative, right? I mean,
sure. Yeah.
It's like so there's a lot of complicated issues and involving data. It's going to just continue to get more.
We'll keep reporting on the Internet of Things.
We will. Cool. All right. Well, I had an article I wanted to report on this week, and this was a good one that we ran actually in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily by Alan Nickel, called Icebergs Ahead, Ramming Speed Yes, Icebergs Ahead, Ramming Speed by Alan Nickel appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And this is a good piece that describes honestly and with pretty brutally, I think, the mechanics of a failing continuous improvement culture at one single organization. Many of us have been there. Many of us know the signs. But if you haven't and don't, well, Alan Nickel lays them bare for you right here in this article. His buddy, and let's unspool this a little bit, I'll give you the background here. His buddy works at a company that claims to be undergoing a lean transformation. A lean transformation. Many of you out there are undergoing a lean transformation, or claim to be. And Alan's friend is in a company like that. Well, they're undergoing lean transformation, but those efforts have been halted because management is taking everybody off of lean work and putting them onto a firefighting drill to catch up on temporarily late shipments. Cue head slap.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, wow. Anybody out there who understands the lean approach or quality protocol, well, and the mindset of that will say, well, that's nuts. I mean, you got in this problem with late shipments probably because you never sought out root causes and just slapped Band-Aids on problems, and now they're in a problem and they're going to do what? The same thing.
The same thing.
Slap a Band-Aid on the problem.
And put the solution off to the side.
Off to the side, right.
I mean, the ultimate solution.
The ultimate solution, which is what we're all supposed to be getting at here. And yeah, like I say, this is completely counterproductive. I mean, anybody who understands this will know that this is counterproductive to the purpose of what you're trying to do, which is to seek out, identify, and correct, hopefully, root causes of problems, the real problems, like you mentioned. Now, this is a good point that Al makes in this article, which is one that sometimes we gloss over, is that problems arise in all organizations. You know, the fact that you are a continuous improvement organization that buys into lean and really embeds it into your culture doesn't mean you're not going to have problems. I mean, you're still going to have problems. You just encounter them because business is that way. But it's how you deal with those problems that determines really truly whether you have a culture of continuous improvement or not in your organization, because it's inevitable. They're going to come up. Far too often what happens, I think, is the priority seems to be to make more mistakes faster. That's one of Alan's lines in the piece, and we've heard that a couple of different iterations before over the course of time. You know, if you do it that way, if you do it the way that he's talking about here, where you slap a Band-Aid on it, and you say, we've got to take everybody off of lean, and we've got to put them on to delivering the product quicker, what's going to happen is you're going to continue doing what you're doing faster. You're going to more efficiently make mistakes, and you're going to proliferate that problem greatly. It's going to just become a bigger and bigger issue. Again, if you don't step back and look at root causes. It's tempting to look at these short-term problems as they arise, like late shipments, and apply those Band-Aids. But I think if you do that, all you're doing is you're just, to use another analogy, you're kicking the can down the road. You're never really going to unspool that. You're never going to get to that. So if you do want to actually fix root causes, well, what do you have to do? Well, you have to, I think, first be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with your bosses, and your bosses have to be honest as well. The fact of the matter is, you may just not be a lean culture. You may not be. You may want to be. You may want to have a continuous improvement culture in your organization. That may be a goal, and that may be where you're going. But you may not be there now. And one point that this article makes, which I thought was really interesting, was this idea that if you're saying you are and you're not, you're doing even more damage, because you're going to just erode the morale of your organization. If you are not a lean organization, say it. Say, we intend to become a lean organization. Here's the steps we're going to take. But don't say, we have this culture of continuous improvement. We have this culture where we're going to be lean, we're going to be effective, we're going to be efficient. Because when you don't do that, everybody knows. I mean, come on, you can't pull the wool over your employees' eyes. You certainly can't pull it over your customers' eyes. I mean, anybody who looks at that is going to know that you're doing short-term fixes. You're for a firefighting organization. So that's a good first step. If you find yourself there, if you find yourself in a situation like Alan's buddy's company, and you're a manager, you're a top manager, and you're facing this, maybe step back and have a meeting with your team and say, you know what? We intend to be a lean organization. We're not right now. We're not. We're going to take steps to get there. Maybe you need to bring in some help too. I mean, there's certainly a lot of help out there for people. Education and consultants, all sorts of things, where you can begin to transform your company, but really transform your company, not transform it in a way where, again, you're just going to slap a Band-Aid on it. I mean, I think we see it so often, and a lot of people out there are probably nodding their heads and saying, "Yeah, Mike, we've heard it a zillion times before." But it needs to be said and said and said, because I think there's a lot of companies out there that are doing the same exact thing, that say they're lean. that say they're continuous improvement organization. You're not. You're not, especially if you're going to stop and you're going to stop what you're doing, stop the long-term efforts that eventually you're going to solve these problems and get to root causes, and take everybody off that and start to address the problem with late shipments. Then you're not a lean organization. That's the way you know you're not. And I think it needs to be said. It needs to be said again and again and again because it's important.
Again, common sense. A lot of this is just common sense stuff too.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I like some of these articles. Is, I mean, you read them and you go, well, yeah. But I mean, the problem is that you do get caught up in the situation that he mentions there. Is, you got to solve a problem. Oh gosh, I guess our lean program should have dealt with this, but it didn't. But now we're in this bind, so now we got to fix it. Yeah. And we all know what he's saying. I mean, we all understand it. Sure. But you just get caught up in the moment, and sometimes you got to bail and do what you got to do. But at some point, you got to come back and fix it.
Well, sure.
Fix the process.
But what he said, which I hadn't heard as clearly, is be honest. Be honest with your team, be honest and say we're not. Yeah. Yes, we said we were lean. We're not. Obviously, we're not. We had to stop to do this. So let's stop and re-examine and get to lean and get to root causes.
This actually touches another article we ran not too long ago, which was just, sometimes you have to be honest with your mistakes. Yes. Even if they're really big mistakes, even if they're mistakes that cost you a lot of money, you just got to go, we screwed up, and take it over.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, well, we're towards the end of the show, but it's time for our tweet of the week.
Yes,
and this one comes to us from Twitter user Sean Upchurch, who quotes Nelson Mandela. "We can't afford to be killing one another. Given the violence currently swirling around the world in the Ukraine and Syria and South Sudan and Nigeria, and really far too many other places. Those are words literally to live by." Yep. Thank you, Sean Upchurch, and thanks to the late Mr. Mandela as well.
That's right.
As always, you can find us on Twitter at QualityDigest.com.
Yes, you can. Thanks, Dirk. All right. Well, next week we have interesting stuff going on. Dirk, you know all about this. It's World Metrology Week.
That's right. World Metrology Week for people who measure stuff.
That's right. We do it every year in the latter part of May. May 20th actually is World Metrology Day, and that goes back to 1875.
Yes, it does.
The meter convention in Paris, I believe it was, where they fixed the length of the meter at that time.
I think that was it. Yeah.
And from that has sprung this idea of the importance of metrology and measurement, test and measurement.
And that. Standards are same. The critical bit of that was that standards are the same. Metrology standards are the same throughout the world. So an inch is an inch no matter where you're at. A meter is a meter no matter where you're at. A kilo is a kilo no matter where you're at.
That's right. That's right.
And that's really the importance of it. Is that you can trust that measurement no matter where it's taken.
That's right.
All next week is World Metrology Week. We'll have a lot of editorial content that is related to the world of measurement.
That's right.
Metrology.
So look out for that.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today, and also thanks to Stan Presbolinski of SimData for joining us to talk to us about the Internet of Things. And thanks to all of you for joining us, and we will see you again next week.
That's right. Have a great weekend.
So long.
Bye.